transfer of funds from the EEC to provide additional weatherization services. So this proposal, this is section 6, starts on page 13, that the efficiency charge was established with the fundamental concept that electric efficiency investments that reduce electric energy and demand use provide benefits to all ratepayers. So if there's an investment in your house that provides grid benefits to lower costs for all ratepayers. As a ratepayer advocate, the department has been really very guarded with those funds because they are ratepayer funds to ensure the maximum return for those ratepayer investments. There have been some pilots and exceptions to that, I will say. We have funds from participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and the forward capacity market that are indirect ratepayer funds. So those two streams create revenues indirectly, and those have been directed to thermal and process energy fuels efficiency. More recently, there's a state energy management program pilot and the energy savings accounts pilot. Those two do allow thermal use with energy efficiency charge, but in both of those instances, the entity that paid the efficiency charge is essentially keeping their energy efficiency charge. So those are ongoing pilots to determine the value in that kind of mechanism. This would be a little bit different. It's directly taking energy efficiency charges and directing them to weatherization. And while the department would prefer that the study came first and that we've already done the study and that we know where best to put them, we also recognize that the acute need for weatherization services that was identified in the origination of this bill and by the legislature has been discussed all session. So we're supporting this as a one-time use of energy efficiency charge funds as long as there's a number of guardrails on there, which the legislation does appear to have, including that the funds are directed to exactly what they're intended, and there's guidance to 80 to 140% of median income, that they come from exactly where they are intended to come from. These funds, at the urging of the department, Efficiency Vermont, kind of looked internally on how they could become more efficient. And they did a great job and found, my understanding is, $3.5 to $4 million of funds that were in 2019 and 20. And so the language in section 1 is intended to kind of bound it to funds that are carried over from year to year and as a result of those. My understanding is that both of those pieces have to happen. They have to be operational efficiencies and carried over in order for it to go to weatherization funds. And with that bounding, and that it's not supplanting any other programs, it's in addition to programs that we're supporting this.
Did you say $3 to $4 million?
That's right. Almost $2 million per year.
In just this section? Section's coming from just section 6 of the bill?
Correct.
Where's your package? Your package?
My package spent up to 2.25 of it this year.
Of this money?
Of this money. So basically, Efficiency Vermont has worked to streamline its own operations.
Right.
They therefore have some surplus money and are trying to figure out what to do with it, and this tells them. And again, it's in the context of a transition, a larger transition, and trying to come up with cash, but we didn't like the fuels assessment that the House did.
And that, as this one-time piece with the study coming along with it, that will really elevate everybody's understanding on how the best way, at least that's the intent, the best way to deliver these services in the future. So, on building energy labeling, a couple of comments there. First, the department's generally supportive of the legislation. It's a way to highlight the value of energy efficiency to consumers and prospective property buyers, but also because there's nothing mandatory, there's mandatory information provision, but no mandatory labeling or that would create significant increase in cost to
I
buyers.
think the one problem is that realtors already supply that information.
Right.
We found that out last year when this bill came through.
That's our understanding too, is that realtors are already providing this, and so that it's not a big lift, and it's creating a baseline that we're kind of encoding that this current practice is the good thing to do. We do have some. Sorry.
No, last year we were told it was mandatory already, and it's passed out. So I don't know where it's mandatory, but we need to find that out.
In the provisions in this legislation, it makes it is it.
No, last
that's
year, the
already
same
there,
thing came
right.
through, and we were told that no, it was mandatory for realtors to provide this information. So we can trace it down again, but
Yeah, I can try and follow up on
Okay,
that,
yeah.
because don't have the answer on that one. We do have some suggested minor edits to the legislation that we have provided to committee staff. They do three things. They're minor changes, but they're significant to the department.
can you tell us what page? You've got it? Okay.
Yes. Are you on draft 2.1?
Yes.
Okay. So, the first is on page 7, line 16. This is a change that the Department of Public Service is staffing the meetings and holding these meetings, so this proposed change would have the department be the one to call the meetings. So we're proposing on lines 16 and 17 to strike a co-chair or any three of its members, and replace with the Department of Public Service in consultation with the co-chairs.
I think,
This is the labeling stuff?
This is the labeling.
yeah, and I think the testimony we had was that there is this committee exists, but it's not meeting. We're not sure why, but I think this may be broadening who can call it. To see if they can get them to meet.
So we're focused on continuing to
Okay.
have these committees meet, and we're committed to doing that. The second changes are on page 11, line 20. Is striking shall and replacing with may. And then also on page 12, line 4, doing the same thing, striking shall, replacing with may. This language is intended to just not allow the working groups to go in perpetuity. So we want the work to get done, but we don't want to continue to have these working groups just to have them. We want them to be productive.
That sounds like what's been going on.
Well,
So, yeah,
so currently, I think one of the reasons, at least on the residential side, my understanding is that there is information related to how to get a rating that is part of that information that needs to be provided. And the Department of Energy has changed their tool, their rating tool, and so those materials.
which department?
the federal Department of Energy.
Energy.
So it pointed to a federal rating tool, said if you wanna rate your home through, Energy Savvy was one of the options at one point, but if you wanted to rate through one of those tools that the Department of Energy, Federal Department of Energy, hosts, then here's the information to do that,
We
not
had
a
a
requirement.
brochure that the realtors pass out, and I'm not finding my copy, and it probably got cleaned off the desk when we were cleaning this morning. But, Nancy, do you know if that's in there?
Yes, actually, Sarah has it electronically for all of you, and Madam Chair, Nancy Lynch
Yes.
for the Vermont Association of Realtors. If I may also just address, it's actually not, to my knowledge, it is not mandatory. It was an agreement that the Vermont Association of Realtors, and this predates me, and Efficiency Vermont came up with an agreement together. So
Okay.
while they do it as if it was mandatory, it's practice. It happens at every transaction. It's not necessarily in statute as
Not in
mandated.
statute.
However, the pamphlet that we have is handed out at the P&S, and also remember the initial information around energy efficiency can also be put in that MLS box. So they actually get hit 4 places along the way, that they're given information about the status of the home.
The last change that we're proposing, there's 2 of them, and it really just pushes back some dates in order to give actual time for the working groups to come up with answers to the questions they're tasked for. This is page 8, line 16, striking January and replacing that with July, so 6 months further, not January 1st of next year, but July of 2020. And it also occurs on page 12, line 12, having the commercial and multi-unit building energy report due in 2022, January 15th, 2022, as opposed to 2021.
I think we have heard that the department is somewhat understaffed, or that you've been under a budget crunch, and there were 4 or 5 people.
That's right, that's correct. We're reorganizing and refocusing, and there's also, everybody is overworked, so I don't want to get into, although I
Right.
could, what
I think
all
we
the
understand
tasks,
that
but-
there's some stress
Right.
in this, okay.
Thank you, that is all I had to testify on today.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Abby, right. Oh, those are the
Language.
yeah, no, here it is.
They had it.
Yeah. Okay. Just wondered if that reference to the federal where you got to rate it. Okay.
So hello, Abby White with Efficiency Vermont. I'm here to address sections 6 and 7 of H.513. And just to provide a little bit of background, because I haven't had the opportunity to address all of you yet. Efficiency Vermont is a electric and thermal efficiency utility. We're regulated by the Public Utility Commission, and we're also a performance-based regulated entity whereby the PUC establishes the budgets and the goals for Efficiency Vermont to achieve over a 3-year performance period. So right now, in 2019, we're in the middle of our current 3-year performance period. Our next performance period starts in 2021. And the process that we use to identify the goals and the budgets That's called the Demand Resources Plan proceeding. That kicks off this fall, although there's still some work underway currently as we speak, and culminates next fall. So it's a one-year process, and I think that's just important timing for you all to kind of be grounded in as we're contemplating some of the dates in this particular legislation. So, as I said, we're a regulated entity. Their revenues for Efficiency Vermont, they're from primarily from the energy efficiency charge, which is a charge on electric bills. That money is collected at the state level. Efficiency Vermont deploys that throughout the state of Vermont, with the exception of the city of Burlington, as we've talked about. Burlington Electric Department is their own energy efficiency utility. And we also receive money through the forward capacity market and proceeds from Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that we deploy for thermal efficiency work. That's to help homes and businesses reduce fossil fuel use. Those dollars are also regulated by the PUC. Again, the PUC establishes the goals for those, and it's incumbent upon Efficiency Vermont to work to achieve those goals over that 3-year performance period. So primarily what we're here to talk about right now is weatherization. And I wanted to give a little bit of background on the work that Efficiency Vermont does in weatherization. We work very closely with a lot of the different weatherization agencies and service providers throughout the state. Efficiency Vermont dollars primarily serve moderate income customers. We do not serve customers that are below 80% of area median income. That's the work of the weatherization assistance agencies. So we deploy RGGI for capacity resources. In this regard, we typically weatherize roughly 800 to 1,000 homes a year. We provide an incentive to customers. Customers have to then find the resource on their own to pay for the rest of the project. So if a project costs $5,000 to $6,000, we might pay $1,200 of that, and the customer has to come up with the rest either through savings or financing. We deploy the services through a network of private contractors called the Efficiency Excellence Network. So our role in that is to train contractors. We recruit them, we train them. We ensure that the services that we're providing are high quality. We do QA and QC checks on those to ensure that customers have faith and trust in the work that's being done. So,
So do customers have trouble finding loans for the other 80%?
well, there's different loan products that are available right now. So customers can go to their bank and get a home equity loan. We also offer the Heat Saver loan. And that's a product that was developed with, first in the Department of Public Service. And through the Heat Saver loan, Efficiency Vermont buys down the interest rate, and we also make it more affordable through attractive terms, to customers.
What's going on with the treasurer's fund? She's got like $5 million.
I can't speak to that. I think that money is, again, available for customers to access. I believe that there was an RFP that went out earlier this year, and that there's different financial institutions that are accessing those funds. Efficiency Vermont's not one of those, so I can't really speak to that.
My understanding is it's very low interest.
You got those.
I don't understand why that wouldn't be part of your portfolio, because it's also terribly underutilized at this point. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. If people go for commercial loans and we qualify for this, could you get us an answer to that?
Yes, I'm happy to.
And we'll get someone from the treasurer's office to come over and talk to us.
So just to wrap up a bit on the background on the weatherization piece, in 2019, so we're on a calendar here, so in this year, our goal is to deploy $4 million of the RGGI and FCM money to do both comprehensive home energy weatherization and partial home energy weatherization. So we aim to hit around 2,000 homes.
That's before the section.
That is, yes.
Okay.
So again, this is just the background. So now diving into section 6, which references resources from the Electric Efficiency Fund the operational efficiencies that can be deployed towards weatherization. So as Mr. Port testified to, in collaboration or kind of in working with the Department of Public Service, Efficiency Vermont has been able to find operational efficiencies in our own budget. Some of those are through staff attrition, some of those are through just improvements we've been able to make in process and technology. And those savings over the course of this performance period, 18 to 20, will be roughly $4 million. So as it relates to section 1, yes, it's a policy question in terms of using those electric efficiency funds for weatherization. So it's a policy decision. There has been precedent for the legislature doing that in the past, and in fact, the energy savings account pilot that we talked about quite a bit in this committee last year is one example of that. The customers in the energy savings account pilot, the commercial customers will continue to pay in their energy efficiency charge. However, they're able to recoup up to 100% of that funding to pay for a variety of projects. So I think on section 1, again, it's a policy question. Our intent would be to use the full amount of that carryover for weatherization. I think the focus, we support definitely that focus on weatherization for moderate income customers. Having the range go up to 140 is also useful because it enables us to deploy resources out to the full market. I think in order to get the market lift and the penetration of work that you're looking for, we need to make sure this is available really to everybody. And enabling us to use the carryover would produce roughly 2,000 more jobs. So just to also touch on the carryover, as I said, they come from operational efficiencies, staff attrition. The savings do not at all affect level of service to customers, so it did not affect the level of incentive, it did not affect the level of technical assistance.
So if this went through, how many homes would you do full or partial weatherizations in what fiscal years?
It would be roughly 2,000 more on a calendar year. So
2,000 on top of 2,000?
Right,
Yes.
so 4,000.
And that
Yes.
and how much money would that translate to?
Well,
In terms of extra
we're
money?
deploying roughly 4 million this year. And so if we were, and that, again, that 4 million is not just for residential, there's some of it that goes to commercial, there's some of it that goes to buying down the interest rate on the heat saver loan, for example. So I think an additional 2 to 3 million this year would get us to the doubling of the 2,000 to 2,000. Yeah. And if I may, just to quickly talk about section 2, or
Okay.
it's actually section 7 now with the old section 2. So section 7, which talks about the proceeding at the PUC, we share the Department of Public Services enthusiasm for the proceeding. It's something that's really essential to figuring out how the different entities are operating in this space, whether they're efficiency utilities, distribution utilities, or private actors, to figure out how those entities can best coordinate in service to state goals. So we're excited about the prospect of the PUC undertaking this work. Again, I think they're the best entity to be able to do that. We would further like to suggest that any of the work they do really needs to inform the next demand resources plan proceeding. And that's what I talked about at the very beginning, where it kicks off this fall, wraps up next fall. And so we would like to ensure that any goals that are established for the 2021 timeframe are really informed by this proceeding.
Okay.
Is there any deadline in this proceeding? I'm picking up
The
over
bill-
and over again that you send something to the PUC, you don't know exactly when it's going to come out.
The language in the bill as written now has a preliminary report coming in January of 2020 and then the final in 2021.
Okay.
So our strong hope is that whatever comes out in the preliminary is informative enough to shape the next DRP.
It seems like we're getting a check back, halfway through. It seems like we could say something like, any information you're sending us that might inform the order, because there is an awkward timing thing. It's the opposite of the BED thing, which is many years out. We actually want the information to potentially inform the order.
I also want to clarify a point around order of appointment compared to a demand resources plan or performance period. So an order of appointment basically establishes the management of that franchise over a period of time, and it's reviewed through it's reviewed on a periodic basis. Ours is 11 years, I believe Burlington Electric's is also 11 years. Our order of appointment goes through 2026. What I'm referring to is the performance period, which is established in 3-year increments. That sets the goals and the budgets. So they're slightly different.
So how big is your budget from all your sources?
On an annual basis, it's around 60 million.
60 million.
Yeah, so it's 60 million this year. That includes roughly 50 from the electric efficiency charge and 10 from the FCM and Reggie.
So if this wasn't in this section of the bill, what would you be doing with that $4 million surplus?
So we would be going to the PUC and opening a proceeding on use of carryover funds. Those can be deployed a number of ways. One of the ways is through reduction in rates, so return back to the customers, the ratepayers.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up because we've got Michael O'Grady, who's probably in a tie with Jen Carby as the hardest person to access in this building. And we haven't had our counsel walk us through this one, so I know he's on a limited time and will enlighten us.
Well, I think you had Luke Martin walk through
Right,
the
for
sections that you were talking
and
about
you
this morning.
Got the bottles?
So I'm going to talk to you about the bottle bill.
Right.
As you may remember, last year you reclaimed the sheets, those unclaimed beverage
Yes.
container deposits, which beginning January of this year will be deposited into the Clean Water Fund for the purposes of the Clean Water Initiative. The way you made that program work last year is you required the initial manufacturer, the initial distributor of the beverage container to open a separate interest-bearing account, and within 3 days of collecting the deposit on any container, deposit that deposit in the interest-bearing account. Well, some of the smaller beverage container manufacturers thought the 3-day issue, the 3-day requirement was too onerous. They're only collecting a few nickels per week, and they have to keep going to the bank every 3 days. So that initiated a conversation about whether the separate interest-bearing account was necessary at all. There are other bottle deposit states that don't have the interest-bearing account requirement. The Department of Taxes came in and said, well, we could collect it the way that we collect the rooms and meals tax, with the report and a remittance by the 25th of every month. And so that is what the House did. The House, instead of having a separate interest-bearing account, there is just the requirement, and that 3-day provision, there is a requirement that the beverage container manufacturer, which is the initial deposit initiator, they report by the 25th of each month and remit the unclaimed deposits at that time. So you'll see that specific language on page 18 of what's in front of you. You'll see on page 18, line 10 and 11, the reference to the transaction account, which is that separate account that's being struck. The requirement to open that separate account is being struck on page 18, lines 15 through 18. The requirement that they deposit into that account, the refund values that they collect is being struck on page 18, 19, and 21, going on to page 19. And you'll see the 3 business days provision is specifically being struck on page 19, line 2. Then you'll see on page 19, lines 10 through 13, the requirement that they report on or before the 25th of the calendar month succeeding the quarter ending on the last day of March, June, September, and December, just as they do for rooms and meals. They report back the number of beverage containers sold, the amount of beverage container deposits received, and the amount of refund payments made, and any additional information required by the Commissioner of Taxes. Page 20, lines 9 and 10. At the same time they do their quarterly report, they remit any unclaimed beverage container deposit or abandoned beverage container deposit, and you'll see page 20, line 19, what that is. The amount of an abandoned beverage container deposit for a quarter is the amount equal to the amount of the deposits that the deposit initiator collected in the quarter, less the amount of the total refund value paid out by the deposit initiator. And then the rest of it is either a conforming change, page 21, line 3 and 4, referencing the amounts of deposits collected in the quarter, page 21, line 8 and 9, similar, page 21, line 15, in the previous 4 quarterly filings instead of during the preceding 12 months. And then you get language about how the Department of Taxes is going to enforce, have hearings, and offset. So page 21, line 16 through 19, the department's going to enforce under their general administrative provisions for enforcement, which is 32 VSA Chapter 151. Now, page 21, line 20, the deposit initiator may, within 60 days after the date of mailing of the notice of deficiency, seek a hearing. And the hearing subject to the APA, and within 30 days of a determination at that hearing, the agreed deposit initiator may appeal to the Superior Court. And then page 22, lines 8 through 12, notwithstanding any appeal, this effectively gives the Commissioner of Taxes the ability to offset any unpaid remittance of the sheets to any other refund payment that is due to that deposit initiator. You'll see on page 22, lines 18 through 21, going on to page 23, that the sales data, the information that they're submitting is going to be confidential business information under the Public Records Act, but it can be disclosed in aggregated form that does not directly or indirectly identify individual deposit initiators. Page 23, line 3, section 9, page 23, line 13, section 10. The section in which the bottle deposit bill is in is an A&R section. A&R is the one that enforces it, but now DOT is collecting the money and DOT is enforcing some of that. You have to make the distinction between what A&R is enforcing and what DOT is enforcing, and that is made in the default A&R enforcement chapter, which is a chapter that applies to all A&R enforcement provisions. You'll see on page 23, line 9, A&R is enforcing 10 VSA Chapter 53, the bottle bill, provided that the Secretary may not take action to enforce the provisions of Section 1530 through 1530 that are enforceable by the Commissioner of Taxes. Similarly, on any appeal, it's qualifying that an actor or decision of the Secretary of A&R of the bottle bill is appealable to the Environmental Court, except for those acts or decisions of the Commissioner of Taxes, which we just reviewed, are appealable to the Superior Court, not the Environmental Court.
Anyone who's here for the broadband bill, we've got 3 more witnesses. It's gonna be at least a half an hour. So you might wanna get oxygen or stretch your legs. Okay.
So that's the bill. It's intended to provide some administrative relief to the small beverage container deposit initiators, and it also provides an administrative ease to the Department of Tax.
Can you give us some examples of a small beverage initiator, a large beverage initiator?
Sure. So The guy that came up, that kind of initiated this, I think his brewery's called the Thrush Brewery down in Bennington area. And he was not selling that during certain times of the year. He's only selling, 20 containers a week. And he didn't want to have to go and have to create.
So 20 containers.
Bring his dollar to the.
Yeah, I don't think the bank likes you doing that.
Right.
What about like a small convenience store, they do deposit initiator?
They're not a deposit initiator.
What makes one a deposit initiator?
You're the first one to collect the deposit for the container, and that happens from the manufacturer to the customer, or the manufacturer to the wholesale,
The wholesale.
or to the retail, depending on what your chain is. So it's generally the manufacturer, but sometimes it's a distributor. Some of those larger manufacturers have distributors regionally that do all of their distribution. And so they might be the one that collects the first initial deposit.
So tell me about this guy at Tony again, from Manchester, is he a bar or something?
No.
He's a small
It's
brewer.
a small brewery.
Okay.
But most of the stuff he's doing is in kegs or pony kegs, right? So the containers that he's selling, he's not selling that many of them. So it was an administrative burden on him he'd sell a 4-pack one day and not selling, he'd have to run down to the bank and deposit 20 cents into the separate interest-bearing account.
So last year, it seems like we worked on some brewer issues, and this year as well, and we tended to distinguish between small and large. Is there any?
There's no distinction in the bottle deposit bill about small or large.
No, what I'm saying, in this context, are we losing any money on the float, or not getting the money every month? And if it's not a problem for
No,
95% of the people
Right.
who are collecting it,
So-
and we're changing the whole system for this small little group.
No, the only way you would have been losing money is if you were having them remit the interest that was being accrued on their account each quarter. But last year, you actually said that they got to keep the interest that was accruing on their account. So they never were going to remit the interest anyway. So you're not losing money in that regard.
No, I'm talking about more, I understand that, but aren't they paying monthly right now?
No, they're supposed to go to a quarter, it's a quarterly system.
Okay, so that won't change.
That won't change.
Yeah, and it's going in the same time as rooms and meals, so they get to do all their bookkeeping.
And I'm gonna fall on my sword on this one. When I originally drafted this, I drafted it based on the Connecticut law, Connecticut and Massachusetts. I used Connecticut's separate interest-bearing account, which was a 3-day provision. They subsequently amended it to 30 days, and I never changed the bill so the 3-day thing, that's me.
So you really want to see this passed?
I don't really,
Yeah.
I don't have any constituents that are small brewers.
Some of us do.
Yeah, this is.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Okay. And we are going to Falco Schilling. No, I want my committee to have a presentation. So, I think they need to reach a decision before we do.
Good morning. So originally, my colleague Amy Schollenberger was going to be testifying, but she's out sick, and we thought it'd be good to not bring her into such a crowded room.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. So thank you for your consideration of H.513. My name is Falco Schilling, and I'm here representing NeighborWorks of Western Vermont. And want to thank you for your work to increase the state's investment in home weatherization. I'm here today with a request for your consideration regarding the Pearson Amendment. As you may know, the House included in their budget $250,000 that's intended as a pass-through grant to NeighborWorks of Western Vermont to support the expansion of Heat Squad across the state. And the Heat Squad program is a weatherization program that helps primarily 80 to 120% AMI customers weatherize their homes. I'm attaching for review a summary of what Heat Squad is and the appropriations request for this program, as well as a summary of the return on investment for the program. Our specific request regarding H.513 is that you designate $250,000 to support Heat Squad to support their expansion to more of the state. This funding would be applied to direct support for homeowners who are interested in weatherizing their homes, and how the program has worked is outlined in the documents that we sent. The Heat Squad supports excuse me, one more time. The Heat Squad helps support homeowners prioritize weatherization projects and also to finance them through loans, incentives, and rebates. The Heat Squad is currently participating in both the Treasurer's Loan Program for weatherization projects and the Heat Saver Loan Program through Efficiency Vermont, which helps lower interest rates for homeowners for weatherization. The homeowners pay for the projects that they undertake through Heat Squad's program, and then the Heat Squad provides assistance with planning, working with contractors, and securing financing. In addition, NeighborWorks of Western Vermont is a CDFI lending agent and thus can match state dollars with loan funding available for homeowners. This is a dollar-for-dollar match from the U.S. Treasury. So if the state were to invest $250,000 in Heat Squad, then $250,000 can be made available for homeowners to borrow without additional cost to the state. So that's our request, and this is a one-time request.
Okay.
So thank you.
I'm trying to figure out where you want the $250,000 to come from. There's a $350 from the general fund to Efficiency Vermont.
Yes.
You would like us to designate that $250,000 of that goes to Heat Squad.
We would like $250,000 designated for Heat Squad. We
Okay,
aren't saying
what
exactly.
area does Heat Squad cover?
So Heat Squad currently is covering primarily the southern counties in the state, but then they also recently received a Northern Borders grant and are covering Orleans, Essex, and Caledonia as well. So they're in Bennington, Rutland, Windsor, Wyndham, and Addison, as well as
What's
the
with
northern
my
county.
county?
Yeah, that's right. In mine.
Or yours? All right. And you do loans or you do grants?
So they do direct work with homeowners who will come in and they'll get an assessment, and then after that they will help them acquire low interest loans primarily.
So it's more facilitation than
Yes.
direct.
Okay, so what's the $250,000 being spent on?
So that's for operating costs to help with the expansion. So right now the program is running at a deficit, but if they can get to the scale needed to go statewide, this is why they're one-time costs. So overall, the entire ask over 5 years.
So you want us to take most of what we've put in to help you expand. Once you expand, you are kind of the facilitator, helping people to get loans come to you and you help them find low-interest loans.
They also help connect them with contractors. They help with the initial assessment, so it's $150 up.
So what's the difference between the services you provide and what Efficiency Vermont provides?
I believe they're somewhat similar, but we also contract and work with Efficiency Vermont.
Okay. Okay, other questions?
There was subcontracting?
Do you have a copy of your amendment?
I don't have the,
We'll get them once.
yeah.
Is that where
We
you're?
all had them. They should be in your folder because we talked
Yeah,
about it last.
it's in the budget. And
It's
it's
in the-
referenced in the last section of the amendment. Senator McDonald.
Is Heat Squad a subcontractor to Efficiency Vermont, like other subcontractors?
I believe so.
Okay, I think Abby, can you,
Sure, Abby White, Efficiency Vermont, yes, NeighborWorks is a member of the Efficiency Excellence Network, one of the many contractors we work with.
okay.
Do we single out any other contractors for guaranteed contracts and statute?
Not that I know of. Okay. Okay, other questions? If not, thank you. Okay.
Just do you get money, I think you do get money from the Beth Pierce Fund
So we are actually talking with her right now to try and figure out a way to help utilize those funds and get those out into the community.
Would that be an alternative to these funds?
That would be, it would be different, so these would be operating funds for the program expansion, whereas those would be funds that we could help with people on projects.
I don't,
The Pierce money is all gotta be delivered as a loan, I
As a
believe,
loan.
so that's a big difference.
This is not gonna be delivered as additional loans?
No,
this is their
They're
operating
requesting an
funds.
appropriation.
Right. Which, did you make that request to the appropriation?
we did, we requested it to both House and Senate appropriations. It's included in the House budget. There's $250,000 in one time in the House budget. It is not included in the
It's
Senate
not in the
budget.
Senate, okay. Okay. No other questions? No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and next, Representative Barron. It's been a number of years. I don't know if you and Mr. Rubin want to come up together or separately, it's up to you.
That would be great.
But somebody came up with the idea that V-Light, and I think Senator McDonald and I are probably the only two that remember when we created it. And they kind of forgot about you. And just wanted to see if there was a way, we understand you get Velco stock payments in the name of the people of Vermont, and see if there's a way, we're trying to come up, I think you know, global warming is a big issue in this state. We're trying to find some funds to help with weatherization, which seems to be we got cars and we got buildings, so it seemed to be our two main sources, and we're trying to fix it.
Yeah, I understand that. For the record, my name is Richard Barron, Dick Barron, as I go by. And it has been about 15 years since I sat in this seat.
That long?
Testifying on, I think
Makes
on
me
Act,
feel old.
on Act 68. Just to put things in perspective, V-Light was created as a part of the merger of GMP and CVPS. We are a 501c4 nonprofit corporation. We have been giving money to low-income weatherization projects for the past 6 years. We also, actually, I think we gave a grant to the NeighborWorks as well. And we've also done work with Efficiency Vermont on electric vehicles and charging stations and incentives to dealers and training for dealers to sell electric cars, and even little bonuses for the salespeople to get them, encourage them to sell electric cars. So that's some of the things we've done, but we've had conversations with Senator Ash about this, and if I've got the correct language now, I think it strongly encourages us to give money for weatherization rather than mandating. I think we need to be careful because we are a 501c4 corporation. We, the directors, there's 5 other directors on this board. Richard Rubin is our vice president, and I'm president of the corporation. And kind of, I don't want to discourage you from pushing the envelope a little bit to get these funds, but I think you've got to be careful when you're asking what is not a creature of the legislature, but something that was created by the Public Utility Commission as part of the settlement. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind. We have kind of restructured our thoughts going forward with our strategic plan to go about 75% funding on specific projects that clearly benefit. You can quantify what the outcomes of those grants are, as opposed to just giving money to an organization that we fund EAN, we fund Vermont Rural Resources, and they're out doing education programs, and those are all good, but it's hard to quantify. Are we just paying staff and creating new jobs? So I think we're committed to funding weatherization programs, whether they're thermal or electric, or however we're doing that. That's been our commitment over the last 6 years. We get about $1 million a year in dividends from, well, yeah.
That was kind of my question, so your annual.
About $1 million, we get about $250,000 every quarter,
Okay.
$256.
How much over the last 6 years has gone to weatherization, what percentage of that?
I think it's about 50% off the top of my head. I've got that, those details are available. You have annual reports.
So even if you took our suggestion, put more in, if you gave the full amount, you'd only be giving $500,000 more a year.
250, well, yeah, but all of it. Well, we do have some overhead. But our overhead's about 9%.
Okay,
So we have a.
but you were giving 75% out of direct grants, so.
That's what
Maybe another
we want to do.
Okay.
But if someone comes along with a great idea for, you know, we want to have some funds available for those new ideas and innovations. So, and I think that's my board's feeling. Board members most of them have some experience in public service.
You did understand that former Representative Klein just joined you?
We just, I thought he would be just wonderful to have on the board between Richard and I.
He will be a presence.
I
He's
like
known
Tony.
quite a bit.
I like Tony. He was my daughter-in-law's. He was my daughter-in-law's field hockey coach at U32. So Tony is, ironically, my grandson was named Anthony. So no, he's a great addition to our board actually. And he replaced Chuck Ross, I think,
Okay,
and
yeah.
also we had Peter Walk from
Yeah.
he is on our board now, replacing Scott Johnstone.
Okay.
Pat
Oh,
Moulton's
Cole.
on the board.
Pat Moulton's on the board, Ian
Okay.
Noonan's on the board, Hal Cohn is on the board.
That's a powerhouse. really.
Yeah, and I just try to,
Yeah.
just keep, just as you do, just try to keep peace in the room.
Keep peace. Yeah.
Did I
This
miss
has been
anything?
peaceful today.
What's that?
I said, it's been peaceful
Yeah, I've
here
noticed that.
today.
Yeah, you have a good time.
Not every
It
day.
is crowded, and I recognize about half the lobbyists in the room, I think, so,
Some of them are still here.
yeah, well, a lot of them are still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Richard Rubin. We really are a strong autonomous board committed to keeping our overhead really low and providing money for direct stuff rather than for other people's overhead, like NeighborWorks wants you
Yeah.
to create their structure. We are pretty efficient at getting the money out the door. And to the extent we give it to weatherization, we try to make sure that it actually goes to weatherized houses. And we have a focus on low income also, so a broad base ask of us to just kind of dump money, I hate to use the word dump money, but to give our money to the
Fine.
state, as yet uncreated state weatherization fund, that has to create its own administration and take another layer of, it's like, we like to have the direct entry
Yeah.
into the market.
No, I think what we're really asking, it sounds like you're there, is that you become part of our effort to increase weatherization, and that it's an ask that you focus. It sounds like you've kind of, great minds all work in the same direction. We've all come to kind of the same
I mean,
conclusion.
we have to use our dividends
Right.
income to implement the state's comprehensive
Yeah.
action plan. That's our restriction, and that's fine, as it should be. And but I just think we need to be careful about directing 501c4s.
Yeah, I don't know that,
I don't want to establish a dangerous
I
precedent
need to
here. It
read
could-
this,
could be
it's
the
not my
Counsel-
amendment, but
Well,
I
it's
would
pretty-
be
it's
leery of
pretty-
directing.
It's
Strongly
it just strongly urges us,
We changed that to
So-
encourage, at your request, I think.
well, strongly encourages now, but
Yeah.
if you take the strongly out, that would
That would
make
be,
me happier.
that would, yeah,
Okay.
I would react negatively to that.
Madam Chair,
Okay, yes, Senator
just to,
Pierce.
Mr. Rubis, it's not a new fund, and that fund has existed
Okay.
for a long time. What we're trying to do is make it clear that other money could come into that fund, be light, and I'll just say, this amendment is in no way a reflection on any thoughts on how you have spent the money in the past. It's not meant to be analyzing that, be critical of that or anything. It is just a reflection that over the last year, the legislature has had it reinforced that weatherization is probably the best bang for our heating efficiency dollars. And so we sort of start looking around and say, wow, maybe we could use, have some help from this fund. At your request, we, and completely agree that there was in our initial draft a request for a report back. That seemed way too far, and we all agreed that we don't direct
Right.
any nonprofits to report to the legislature. And you would not be, and I'm sad to say, the first entity to ignore a recommendation or an encouragement, no matter how strong, from the legislative body.
Including some state departments.
And many of the members on your board have direct experience ignoring recommendations. So, I just want to say really clearly that we're not trying to be cute here.
Right.
We're recognizing that there's enormous overlap with your mission as we understand it and what we're trying to do. And it was a way of us saying, hey, we need to, we're trying not to raise a fuels
Right.
assessment. We're trying to figure out where to get money into programs that are working and that we need to invest more in.
I totally understand what your objectives are, and I would just say that when we were funding a weatherization program through the community action agencies, they weren't able to remove, funds weren't eligible to be used to remove vermiculite.
Yeah, we fixed
And
that.
which was important, and we provided funding for the vermiculite removal, so those projects could go ahead.
And I think last year we made it a little broader so that some of that would
Because that's-
happen in our, through
And
our
it-
program.
having had a house in my neighborhood that I sold,
Right.
that's an
Vermiculite.
expensive
It
proposition
is
to
very
remove
expensive, yeah.
vermiculite. It really is.
Yeah.
I just sold a property and the people that acquired it have been going through those expenses, so.
I think we are happy to be part of the process to increase weatherization. I think we've been really supportive of that, and I think we will continue to be supportive of that. I don't think this is a problem for us at all. We're not here saying, leave us alone, we're not gonna spend money on weatherization. We already do, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. I think as long as we can all maintain the boundaries,
I appreciate,
We're all
we
going in the
appreciate
same
the efforts
direction.
that are going on here to increase the funds. I think it's great.
Yeah, actually, I think our board would be very supportive of the direction the legislature is taking on this, trying to take on this.
we're trying to.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. It's my first day back from Florida, so I really enjoyed
Oh.
this.
Well, it could be worse.
Watch out. Thank you.
It's gonna snow tonight, yes.
No, well, no.
I came back a week too early.
No, I think it's about a month too early. It's been like this.
You're right. Thank you.
It's awful. Okay, committee. That's the last witness on this one. We've got a couple witnesses we're gonna go through on 513, which is broadband. After the floor, which I don't think we have, no, we don't have anything on here. We do now. The House has we conferenced the miscellaneous tax bill this morning, other than the veterinary stuff, which they're just doing cows. We're still not sure what you do with a sheepdog that is a dog, not a large animal, but does hurt your sheep.
Or about veterinarians who treat both.
Yes.
There's an ambiguity in terms of what equipment, how would you deal with that?
So that, that's still up in the air, but they have added some ways that we assess or sale of non-tangible property on the corporate income tax, or portion. We have heard nothing. So when we get off the floor, we'll see if we can get Peter and Graham to come in and talk to us, so we at least know what they're doing before three of us, and there are only two there, because Brian can't make it up, I think, till about 1 this
Yeah,
afternoon.
it's about 1:30.
Yeah. Before we start making deals in your name, that we at least all know what they're talking about, and we can do that together. So we'll do that. And then I think it's about time that we sit down and go through both 63 and 513 and see where we are, what we need, because we've got to get him out of here.
It's my hope that we would vote for both today, but is that your plan? And they've got to go next door.
They do. It would be
Forget about
my hope to
conference.
get them all out of here today, and get them out now. So we're gonna work our way through, we'll see how the time looks. I'm not gonna ask you to come back at 1, mostly because I've got the ed financing bill to do on the floor today. But I don't think the floor should be too long. We've been through most of the major bills. I think ed financing, and this year for once it's fairly
Bunch of
simple.
charters.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
How much were you in your budget for this, were you thinking coming out of Ely?
Well, it's sort of up to 1.3.
Up,
We'll try to keep it
so,
brief.
but they said they already put
I'll be right
500.
back.
Is that a dent in what you need? And if they put all their budget into it,
They put all their budget into it. So you're asking about the comparison of our cash versus the house's cash?
no, I'm asking, when you were considering this as part of your package, how much were you thinking you were gonna get from this? And were you including the stuff they already paid to others?
It was not including the stuff they already put in.
So they say they only have 250,000 more to give. And how much were you hoping to get?
This bill, the bill just requests that they spend the whole shoot.
I know, but I thought you had a budget that you got up to
Yeah.
a couple $100,000 more than the house.
Yes, and that includes, that
1.3.
hopes that they would spend it all there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was really tricky to figure out, they don't even know how much they have. I think they have a standard of about $1 million.
Okay. I'm gonna switch us over to 513, which is broadband. Everybody that's here for the bottle bill can relinquish your seats, and we'll get the broadband people in here, because we need to get the folks that are actually active, being the ones that are in here.
So when you ask them to adjourn until 5:30, one of those things, where the bills get moved that way.
I heard that they were until 4:30.
Something like that.
Okay.
I mean,
I haven't
I don't
heard-
mean to be.
I mean, there isn't
These are
very
pretty
much.
close to bus pass,
If
and
we
they've
go-
all got to
yeah.
go from there.
If we go through the ed bill, which I don't think is gonna.
It's not too much to bunch of charters,
Charters? Yeah.
but, you know, both of these bills are going to require.
Yes. since they might have people that came up to be here at 1 o'clock.
Well,
You can see how far
I
we
just
get.
wanna,
Yeah. Okay, we're on 513, and, yeah, that's the one I'm missing. So we, yeah, that's this one, all right. And that's the file I'm still missing. Jeff Austin from Consolidated Communications, I did get a note, we're talking about speeds, come on up. And I assume you're part of the note that got handed to me about speeds.
I'm not sure, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, this is, we were asking for identical speeds up and down, in the hall Friday after I left, or after the committee adjourned. Somebody was telling me that the internet providers are presently doing, like 1,000 down, yeah, no. And so they're doing it, yeah, a gigabyte down and 30 megabytes up, and just what I was trying to figure out on Friday is how much of the speeds up and down is determined by fiber optics versus cable versus copper, and how much of it is policy. Because I'm not sure, and I think we heard that it's not just plugging fiber optics in, if you're all cable in downtown, you can't, without rewiring a significant area of town, just plug fiber optics into your present structure. Have I got that much correct?
And we can talk, yeah, absolutely. For the record, Jeff Austin from Consolidated Communications. Thank you for the time this morning. I've got some stuff I was gonna go through, but do we wanna just kinda go down that road to start?
I think so, yeah.
So, networks are built differently, and there's different technologies. You've got, fiber is a big part of all technologies. So just so you know, any discussion we're talking about internet service, there's gonna be fiber somewhere in the
We
mix,
heard
if
there was
not the whole
fiber
thing.
to the node,
Yep.
and then cable came out from that, but it just, we said, so why don't you just plug the fiber into the node? We then heard that the node could be 15 or 10 or some miles away, and that, so it would be significant rewiring. And I think that's what we heard. And
Yeah.
basically that node is all set up. We just came out of a discussion on why you just couldn't rewire the house voice chamber, the microphones, because it's set up for, it's not digital, and so everything, not just the microphones and the wiring, has to be
changed.
switched out.
Weakest link in a chain.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that's what we're trying to figure out. What can we do?
So when we build a network, and the way we have our network built, we have central offices, which are our hubs. We have one on School Street here in Montpelier.
Okay.
And we have 90 of
Yeah.
those across the state. So our central offices is the intelligence, that's where the dial tone comes from for your phone
Okay, so it's not
service.
just a box on my phone, like,
Nope.
no,
Nope.
it's the office.
Yeah.
All right,
So all the intelligence comes from the central office, and then your dial tone comes from there, and then from there, that's where all the services come from. Now, when you're talking about internet delivery, we have internet equipment in the central office, and from there, it connects to copper to go to addresses, to go to people's houses. This copper's been in the houses, probably since they were built for dial tone purposes, as we all know. So the internet services are kind of distance sensitive. So when you have a central office in 25 School Street in Montpelier, once you go a certain distance, that depends on, that'll illustrate how much speed you can get on the internet side. So that's just one part of our network is central office for phone service, for carrier class services, for internet service, everything starts at the central office. But we know a lot of people live outside the town of Montpelier, just for that example. So what you do is you have to expand the network. So in order to get folks internet service further out, you run fiber. So you run fiber to a node, and we can use that word. So a node is on a pole, or it's on a pad, a cement pad next to a pole, just a box with electronics in it. So you have fiber to the electronics. Just like in the central office, the electronics are fed by fiber.
So you run the fiber from the central office, so I'm in Montpelier, I'm probably plugged in to the main office.
Yes.
Okay, but to get it out to Calais or East Montpelier, you run fiber from your node in the office out to a box.
Correct.
All right, then what happens?
So we connect that fiber into electronics, and these electronics do voice and data. So it does your internet, does your voice, and those, now what you've done is you've taken all that intelligence that's in the central office, and you've moved it out closer to where people live, so you can expand the technology. So you have the fiber at a pole into the electronics. Now you've got to get it to people's houses. So you connect the copper that goes to their houses today into the electronics. And then from there,
You're losing me.
yep, that's
To
okay.
get my house,
Mhm.
you're in a box. You then have to run something up and down all the streets. What are you running up and down the streets from that fiber optic box?
Now, for our purposes, Consolidated, as we've been here for a long time and
Yeah.
the various companies, we connect that to the copper that's at that pole already, that already exists in your house. So we don't have to run anything new.
So you're just connecting that to the copper wire that's running up and down the road,
Mhm.
East Hill Road in Calais.
And now that's one example, because
Alright.
let's say you're on East Hill Road in Calais or
Yeah.
somewhere, and those electronics can only get you a certain distance to provide people service.
Right.
If you have to go further, then you run more, you just repeat. So you run more fiber further out, you put another exact same box out, and you just do the same
Okay, so
thing to
when
go
you
further.
move, you got 3 people, 5 people up the road from me.
Mhm.
So once you wanna go further, you move the box to my front yard,
You just put a new one.
you put a new one in, all right, so you got that. Do you run the fiber optic then? Do the people between box 1 and box 2, they now have fiber optic to connect to?
They could,
Okay,
Yeah.
but you're still running copper to the house.
correct.
What speed does internet get over copper? Is this DSL?
It's DSL, they go DSL, so it depends on what flavor. There's, and I
All right,
won't bore
there's
you
high
guys with
speed
that.
here, but what's the average house getting?
We've got speeds that, our top speed, just to start there, is 100 meg download, 40 meg upload. So that's the top speed on the DSL equipment over the copper that we talked about.
Could you
And-
do 50/50?
No, on the DSL. No, symmetrical speeds are not
Okay.
a DSL kind of
All
technology.
right, so
Now,
DSL can't do symmetrical speeds.
correct. Now, other things we're doing is when we have a new development, we've got 6 locations right now across the state where we actually are doing fiber right to the customer's houses, into the customer's houses. So we've got, like you just mentioned, we've got fiber in the central office, we have fiber to the node, and we're doing fiber to the premise. So any new development that we're looking at, we're probably doing fiber to the premise at this point in Vermont.
Any new development, all right.
Yep.
If I got the fiber running by my house, can I get hooked up to the fiber?
You can get hooked up to the fiber. We actually have some locations, actually in Marlboro, for example, right off Route 9. We have 5 people who are connected to the fiber on our carrier class service. So they have internet service. It's not your residential, consumer class internet. It's our carrier class internet, which you can get up to 10 gig if you wanted to. But it just provides you with those symmetrical speeds at a higher level, of course, you know, are on a carrier
Does
class
that
network
be
at a
up
higher
towards
cost.
Marlboro College?
What's that?
I would assume Marlboro might be.
Marlboro's connected.
Yeah,
Marlboro's
Marlboro's
connected?
connected. Yeah, this is
Alright.
actually just 5 residents. Somebody was going to grad school, somebody was, you know, there was a doctor down the
Okay.
road. It just happened to be a bed and breakfast actually.
Maybe a
happened to be-
few professors that might,
Exactly.
alright.
So there's a lot of options as it relates to speeds, costs, and availability. You know, in Vermont, for example, we've got 175 locations or addresses that qualify for 25.2 or higher. So there's a lot of addresses in Vermont on those higher speeds. Now, but on that note, with all transparency, we do have those remote, high-cost areas that are hard to serve and have been hard to serve, and either don't qualify for anything today, and I think that, or they qualify for less than 4.1. And I think that's around 18,000, you know, per the information I received from
I
them.
think that's the number we've
Yeah.
heard.
And, oh, go ahead.
No, what we're trying to figure out is if we are investing public money, what we invested in.
Mhm.
And I think 10.1 I think is not where we're thinking. But the symmetrical has been suggested. But you're saying that cable, my copper, cannot do symmetrical.
I would hate to speak for them, so I apologize.
Okay, so you're just doing what you are, a phone,
We're communications, yeah, communications,
are you a regulated
Yes.
utility? Okay,
yeah,
so you are the old phone regulated utility,
exactly.
the new Fairpoint, right?
The old fair one.
The old Fairpoint.
Yeah,
Well, you're the new version. All right,
and I was
Are they
wondering,
regulated for
Broadband.
broadband?
No, that's actually regulated at the Federal Communications
Yes,
Commission level,
we
that's a good
are
question.
well aware of that.
Yeah. One thing, just as you talk about public funds and obviously investing those public funds into, you know, broadband expansion, because in Vermont, we have limited funds. You know, everybody knows that, that's part of the problem.
Yes.
Just to kind of give, and I might have done this before, but just to give New York as an example. New York had $500 million that came from fines levied on banks. So obviously it's the, you know, financial hub, you know, of the world basically. So they had $500 million and they decided they were gonna take that money and they're gonna invest that into broadband expansion. They have similar, you know, concerns in the remote areas in New York as we do here in Vermont. So they put out an RFP, and this RFP was basically for 100 meg. They were looking for download. They didn't specify upload. They said upload to be consistent with national trends is what it says in the RFP. But they have 100 meg download is what their requirement was. Now, also in the RFP, they have a 25 meg download requirement, and that 25 meg, the way they wrote it, said 25 meg in the most remote unserved parts of the state. So if we're kind of, and we're not comparing apples to apples certainly, but if you are looking at $500 million and even they knew that there were limitations into what that money could do in these most remote high-cost areas, then that's basically what New York did. It required pricing tiers because as you get further out into these areas, it costs more to serve. And if you're building fiber everywhere, it's gonna significantly cost more to build out there. That would normally.
How does it cost, because we heard the labor costs, putting a wire on a pole is essentially the same. So is there significant difference between the cost of the material?
There is actually, and oddly enough, fiber is significantly cheaper than copper. But it takes the same
I'm
amount
not
of.
surprised given the inflation in the price of it.
Yep, yeah, and it's a raw material, right? Copper's a raw material, and so the cost goes up. So ultimately, but what you still have is you still have the same technicians, the same workforce,
Right.
the same time to put it on the
Got the
poles.
same guy.
Yep, exactly. So ultimately, when we're looking at that, you know, they knew what they could do for speeds. They had a price requirement, that 25 meg service. They wanted it to be affordable, right? And we can build the entire state with fiber to the prem But if it's not affordable, then the folks who need it the most, those 18,000 people who can't get anything today, we build out networks that aren't affordable, then that's not helping them either. So
Right.
New York's idea was they set a price cap of $60 for their 25 meg service. So that was their idea of affordable when they were looking and doing the research. So ultimately, you know, when we're talking, you know, some of my thoughts, when we're talking about those, there's a lot of stuff in the bill, I apologize to go back, on H.513, related to broad bonding, right? The bonding part of that, to give
Yes.
communities, you know, power to do.
That's primarily aimed at the community
Yep.
telecom. Yeah.
Now, but there's a difference between the bonding and like the connectivity fund. That connectivity fund is laser focused on those 18,000 people. And those 18,000 people are the hardest, most rural, most expensive to serve. So if we increase those speeds to a point where there's only certain technologies or certain companies or however that may be, you're really gonna make it more, well, I'm not saying you as you guys, I'm just saying we
Y'all.
all are really gonna make it more expensive to bill to them with potentially more expensive services. If you have a company who builds, and the minimum speed that you can get is 50 meg, and that 50 meg is $70 a month. Is that affordable? Is that helping those 18,000 people? So ultimately, I think that there's probably a good break-even point somewhere where you have a speed that is affordable to build. You have an opportunity for all companies to participate in the state funding, which is limited in the connectivity funds, that will ultimately have a positive effect on these, you know, 16 to 18,000 people. I know I testified a couple weeks ago just for a few minutes, and we kind of broke down the different costs related to the different speeds. And certainly the cost related to getting to 25.3 versus 10.1 was exponentially more expensive to serve per location. Now, I'm obviously a fan of, you know, 10.1 with the limited funds that we have, because I think that we can get more people good internet that don't have it today versus trying to get them the best internet that may just be priced out of their
Well,
range.
we've heard the best is 100. There's a big difference between 10.1, which I understand will get me
Up to 10 points.
up to 10.1, which will get me almost no ability to send anything out and very slow downloads. Now, I'm not particularly concerned about video games or movies.
Yep.
Alright, but for kids doing reports for school, you have to be able to move, and if it's too slow, they'll get bored and not do it. There's nothing like sitting there waiting for your screen
I would agree with
to
that.
produce.
Refresh, refresh,
Yeah.
Refresh.
Yes.
Do we ever do that?
That's my son.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it depends. I think that's one of the things that's a challenge when you're talking about internet as a whole. You can drive down every street in Montpelier in the entire state. Every house is gonna use the internet differently. And for example, I spoke to a customer who has our 10 meg service, just to use 10 meg as an example. They're in rural Sandgate. They own an insurance company, and they do that out of their house. They have our 10.1 service today. He wanted to get more. You know, he's got 3 employees. He's got 10.1 and he's working from home, and he's got the 3 employees. So we looked at that, and we looked at the cost to bring the fiber about 3/4 of a mile up a road and connect to our carrier Ethernet service. Which,
$2,000 a pole, that's electricity.
yeah, that's electricity. I would say we're looking at somewhere in the $20,000 a mile range. So then I would have to get my calculator out. But
So, and he's gonna have to pay that?
so he would pay, we do a business case, it's all business case models. So for example, if we're gonna build to their house at 3/4 of a mile, which will cost X amount of money, his monthly bill will increase by X amount of money. And which means you have a break-even point. If you can make your money back within a certain period of time, then there might not be an upfront cost. for his area, because what he was looking for was about 1010 for service. His monthly cost would not have been increased that much, so he would have had some upfront costs to build that. So, but not extremely high upfront costs. And so we probably talked to him 6 times, and he wasn't interested in doing that. Just another kind of example of, I travel all over the state and meet with towns, and I meet with folks. I was in Barnett over the winter, because there was a Vermont connectivity grant that we knew that was gonna be coming out. And the folks, so we met in a church, we had pizza there, it was great with the community members for about 2 hours. And they asked a lot of questions. And what they were looking for was this public-private partnership to get out to certain, one area of the town, which didn't have any internet access, at that point. So we worked with them. They were actually able to raise some money locally, a few $1,000s to commit to putting to the, to this program. So we applied for the Vermont Connectivity Grant. We put all that information in there, and we were awarded, and those folks, couldn't be happier. I was in Lane Grove 2 weeks ago.
What speed did they end up with?
Everyone will at least get 10.1 in that requirement, up to 10.1. Now, some of those folks, though, depending distance sensitive, will qualify for up to 100 meg. So it's not, there's a minimum, so you have to make sure you get everybody something, but that doesn't mean everybody gets the same thing. So there, like I said, some folks will have the 100 by 40, some folks will qualify for 50 by 20.
Is this really determined not by what I'm willing, because you'll offer me 110, it's a pricing thing,
Mhm.
or is it that as the line goes out from the hub, the speed goes down? So unless if I'm at the far end of that line, I'm stuck.
Well, if you're at the far end of that line, we have a requirement to at least provide 10.1.
Okay,
So
but
it is-
if I wanna do a video business from out there,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, actually, and I know this sounds kind of funny, but I'll just give you another example. When you're talking about businesses, in a rural town, and I'll try to be, this is obviously customer proprietary information, but in a very rural town on the backside of a pond, we have a customer who runs a financial business out of their house. And they have 7 meg of internet, but they choose to run this business from their house. They have 4 employees. They wanted more internet. We quoted the cost for the fiber. That didn't work. So I quoted a cost for another 7 meg. So they ended up getting 2 different 7 megs for their service out there. But they're working, and this is a multi-million-dollar financial investment company that run from their home on the backside of a pond. They're able to run their business. They're able to get what they need done. Now, would they love, the 100 meg at $20 a month? Absolutely. But we went through those conversations and had those conversations. And like I said, I was in Lane Grove a couple weeks ago, and the townsfolk there said, if we can get 25.2, which is one of our products, which is actually over a mile away from the electronics. If we can get 25.2 for the entire town, we'd be thrilled. Now they have 100 meg service. They have a lot of different services that we offer in that town today.
Okay, well, this bill talks about going to 25.4, I believe. 25.3.
Yeah, 25.3 is the FCC.
Can you
can do
you
that.
can do that,
Mhm.
okay.
I'm trying to reconcile the term up to 10.1 compared to at least 10.1.
Well, the up to, when you're talking about TSL technologies, we have up to speeds, which basically is, we're going to give you up to 10 meg of service, if it happens to be 10 meg of service. We have overhead when it comes to data. Anytime you're talking about data, whether you're on fiber or whether you're on copper, you have overhead, you have packets, you have addressing, you have this that goes in the frames that carry your data to the internet.
Does that suggest, though, that some customers get less than 10.1?
That, it should not suggest that.
Why would you say that then?
When we say up to?
No.
Up to, because there is that overhead and you are going on the internet. So for example, if you're going to a website, once you get out of our border network gateway router, and I know that that's a silly term, but it's, once you get out of Burlington, you're out on the World Wide Web. we do not have any control over what's going on in the World Wide Web. So if you're experiencing slow internet and you're not getting your 10 meg because you're out in California on the website, that we don't have control over that. There's also wireless, and we could talk for about 2 hours on wireless. So the
No,
speed.
we're not talking,
No, we won't.
We're not talking wireless.
Well, I promise I won't.
We can't regulate 5G.
No, oh, no, and this is just from your modem, your wireless service. If your modem is in the basement and you're up on the second floor, you're not gonna get 10.1 because your wireless signal might not be strong enough.
And if
to
the
get
grandkids are there and they're playing video games.
Correct, if you have multiple devices, but there's also all these things, spectral
Example,
interference.
if someone had a device that would measure the internet speed
Yes.
at the point at which it exits the house
Mhm.
on a direct connection without, using wireless now,
Yep.
would you have the assurance that it's 10.1 at that point?
You should have the assurance,
And
yes.
could somebody measure that to ensure that, that we're playing with a clean deck?
Yep, and actually, part of the CAF2 funding, the Connect America 2 funding, has a speed test requirement. So now, if you're looking, just so you know, in all transparency, if you're looking at the small print, it does always say speed's not guaranteed. There are
Oh, it's the
overhead.
small print.
Yeah, it's right, it's there, because of all of the different factors that could be involved. And when we're out there testing, there is a threshold, again, in all transparency, at that 80% level. If we're getting 80% throughput, if it's 10 meg, right? If you're getting that 8 meg because of the overhead related to it, then, that's an acceptable speed as it relates to the up to. Now, again, in transparency, and this might be nerdy as we're talking about this, so I apologize. When we're designing these speeds, we don't design 10 meg to be 10 meg. We design 10 meg to be 12 meg. So you don't design a network and say up to 10 meg and hope that you get to 10 meg. We actually have more speed above that to make sure that we're giving people the next speed that they can get. So again, that's a little bit, and I won't talk about it. So as it relates to the symmetrical speeds, again, I think if you're talking about the bonding and some of the really good stuff in that bill, yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't think anybody will have an argument. We're in multiple conversations with towns, about doing the same thing. When it comes to the connectivity fund and those 16, 18,000 people, I think that's where, we want to be really thoughtful to use our every dollar to the best of its ability to try to get them something that they can use. And I think that's an important part. And I just wanted to see if there was anything else interesting as it relates to. Oh, and on the fiber to the prem, and I think that some of you may be involved. There was a Public Utility Commission workshop as it relates to battery backup with the fiber to the prem. So there's, I know that there's a lot of companies, that are here talking, and they're talking fiber to the prem and things like that. I just kind of wanted to point out that when we were attending that, a lot of the companies who've received connectivity grants to build fiber to the prem didn't attend that. So if we're going to kind of push this fiber to the prem and get, potentially other companies in here and more competition, when it comes to, issues like that, I just think that it's important that there's a way to make sure everybody's at the table having that conversation. Like I said, there were several companies there, but even the 3 folks who recently were awarded didn't attend that. Now, maybe they weren't notified, or however that works, but all of that, it's all connected as it relates to, getting customer service. And I just wanted to see, again, I think it's, and on the connectivity funds, I think it's gotta be affordable. We can build fiber to the prem, but if that minimum speed is 50 meg, and that minimum cost is $70, $80, whatever it may be, then how is that actually helping those 18,000 people? Can they afford to get it at that point? Or have we kind of priced the whole system, right now? We had a connectivity grant in Whitingham, Vermont, and we turned this up in late February. We have 24 customers on it now, and those 24 customers have subscribed to 8 different speed tiers: 100 meg, 40 meg, 20 meg, 25 meg. Some of that may be the distance, or some of that may be the house.
they subscribe, I'm trying to get, again, in my mind, I understand as you go out, away from the node,
Mhm.
that your ability to deliver speed to that very end spot declines,
Mhm.
all right?
Correct.
Slows down. But you also offer service packages. So if you're running fiber out there,
Mhm.
I can contract with you for a number of speeds, and I pay according to the speed I choose.
Sure.
All
yes.
right.
Yep.
Okay, but if I'm at the very end of that line, or you need to send that line further
Mhm.
to get that 100 megs out there, okay, so you're gonna do the cost benefit, how many customers per mile, and all of that.
Mhm.
And then if it doesn't meet your cost, I assume profit margin
Sure.
kind of thing,
Yep.
then I will pay a portion of the cost to run that fiber out my street and up my road.
You could,
Up-
yes.
Yes,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
so,
Now that's an option. It
That's
is-
an option.
Yep, that's an option to do.
but
just what you
if
said.
I just, but you will run, well, with a connectivity grant, you will run copper.
With the connectivity grant, we'll run fiber, place electronics on the box.
Yes.
And connect your copper into that to make sure everybody covered under that connectivity grant can get at least,
10.
They can get at least up to 10 meg.
At least up to 10 meg, all right. But in that case, I don't have an option to pay more.
No, you definitely could. Well, let me actually clarify that. If you wanted to get fiber to your house,
Yes.
we have 3,800 miles of fiber in Vermont. We can get fiber to anybody's house along
wants to
that
pay for it.
3,800 mile, exactly, correct.
All right.
And now you say pay for it, there would be a monthly charge, and sometimes, depending on the
But
business case, you may not have to pay.
If you're, I guess the thing that's boggling us, and we talk about, if you've gotta run a new wire and put up new poles,
Mhm.
and fiber is in fact cheaper than copper,
Mhm.
then when you put up new poles or hook something on them that can deliver 10-1, why wouldn't you put up something that can deliver 100?
That's a great question. So, and I'll give you a couple examples. If somebody's building a house and we have to put new poles, and the fiber is 2 miles away, and the copper is right out by the road, it might be, it's obviously more cost beneficial to
Right.
provide the.
No, we're talking about when you're getting a connectivity grant,
Yep,
and you're you're saying that the copper is already there if they have electricity,
basically, yep.
or if
That's
they
fair to
have
say.
phone service?
The copper is there, whether, most places are not off the grid, so most places we know have electricity
I know
and.
one in Orange County.
And have phone service, and have, at one point, had phone service.
Okay.
So,
So the copper is there. You're
Mhm.
running very few places where you're putting up new poles. I mean, up roads that have never,
correct.
all right. So I guess that, I think, at least in my mind, you know, we talk about EC5, it's like everybody's running new poles and new wires, but you're not. You're just, so you would, in fact, the copper is there, and you can provide 10 whatever
Mhm.
with the copper. But if we want you to, so why do we have 18,000 houses that don't have anything?
And actually, those 18,000 houses are in and I did a little calculation today, in about 150 communities. Now, there could be more.
But we assume they've got copper wire in there.
Sure, yep.
So why don't they have access to internet?
Because running that fiber to a location to put the electronics, to connect in, to get them the internet is very expensive.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you have to run fiber from
Downtown
the
Montpelier
downtown,
or some
or
other
the
place.
nearest
Yep.
node.
Correct.
You have to run fiber and put up a new node in order to plug the copper wire that's there into the internet.
Yes.
And if you had to take that fiber
Mhm.
and run it the 10, 15, 20 miles out the Boone Road, there would be a charge to run that fiber rather than just connect up to the existing copper.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
And it's,
This is starting, all right,
Chip.
I'm starting to understand this, yes, I'm
And
dense.
one of the dilemmas that we all here face is that every time a public dollar is sent to move the fiber out a little bit, or to do copper farther up, there gets a point where this company's not gonna hook fiber up. And every time you give them more customers, it reduces the possible customer base of co-ops whose goal it is to go to the end of the road. And so it's almost, the connectivity grants serve to thwart, diminish, reduce the likelihood of getting up to the end of the road and increase the expenses for co-ops that would seek to get up to the end of the road. And that's because they can only do what their stockholders permit them to do to make a profit. We have different goals.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Maybe we need to discuss what our goals are. It's our goal to get everybody hooked up. Is our goal to get everybody hooked up to a certain speed? Or is our goal to provide a competitive advantage to somebody? Or is our goal to level the playing field? I know you have some very strong feelings, but I'm not sure about the rest of the committee. But what we're trying to accomplish will probably enforce what road or fiber we choose to get there. Senator Sirocco.
I'm a little bit confused. Maybe a lot confused. I heard you say that you're supportive of the concept of the veto laws, and then I thought I heard you say, in general, about 15 minutes ago, that you had some concerns with the connectivity funds. Is that
True
correct?
funds.
I support the bond, the ability to bond to build out broadband. And I think that's different than the veto loans.
Right, okay.
And as it relates to the connectivity funds, I completely support the connectivity fund, but I have a concern that at some point, if we keep increasing that minimum speed requirement, that we're going to make it so expensive to build and more expensive for the end users to subscribe, that these 18,000 people that we have left in Vermont are going to be left longer without service.
So, but your concern is that we put speed requirements on the connectivity fund that may be unrealistic in the marketplace.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And like I said, that could potentially just negatively affect the people that it's there to serve the most. Yeah. And as it relates to, competition in Vermont, we have about 175 employees in Vermont, full-time employees, with good benefits and live here and they're part of our communities. And these are the folks who will go out there and they build the broadband and they fix the phones and they build out to enterprise customers. And we do everything, obviously here in Vermont. And those jobs are very, very important to us. And as we're looking at potential state subsidizing of other competition that ultimately would build in our service territories, that erodes, we're already looking at 7% landline decrease year after year after year. We're looking at CenturyLink and First Light being commercial carrier competitors in Vermont for almost every business in the state, including Comcast. 74% of the state today has a wireline competitor. We won't go into the wireless conversation. There's a lot of competition today, and we're fighting for every customer. So we want to just be at least have an opportunity with the state funding.
So do you offer cell service?
We do not.
You do not.
No.
So you're in the same place, I remember, the municipal utilities, the phone companies, where wireless has come in, put a big dent in, none of my kids have a landline.
Yeah, mine either.
I still have one probably because inertia is strong. But, so you now offer internet service. Okay.
And we've done that in a lot of programs.
And you're running that internet service over the same wires that you ran your telephone lines on?
Yep.
Okay.
Which is beneficial. I will say this about fiber to the prem, like I mentioned, we're building fiber to the prem in new developments where it makes sense. It just, we have the opportunity to do that. And it's, cost effective. But one of the things about fiber to the prem, and I've worked in engineering for years and we've done these studies, is you can build fiber on poles, right? You can build it on poles all day long. There's a cost to that, to attach to the poles and to be on the poles and to put the fiber up. Oddly enough, the cost to then run fiber into somebody's home, drill through their brick, siding or whatever it happens to be, run the fiber into the house.
I have a brick masonry house. I understand drilling.
It's complex, it's great, right, if you have the opportunity. But one thing just to kind of, to know, the copper is beneficial because it's there today. When you're building a fiber network, a lot of your costs, and those can be business case model costs if you're gonna get a reoccurring monthly revenue from the customer. But it's almost just as costly to build into everybody's house with fiber as it is to put it on all the poles. So just to throw that out there as you're thinking about it. We can build fiber on that. We've got 3,800 miles of fiber now. Other people have fiber all over the place. You can get it on the poles. But getting it actually connected to a network, a robust, a survivable network, and get it connected into people's houses.
No, I think.
There's some cost.
Yeah, because some of those driveways can be difficult. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Clay, Maria, I apologize, but there are other meetings at noon. We're gonna come back. I'm not sure what the floor schedule is, if we're gonna meet and adjourn, or if I'm gonna actually do the head financing bill, which I think is one of the few new bills that's up there today. But we will be back after the floor. We're gonna take a short break and get a briefing on changes to the corporate income tax that the House has proposed, so we know what we're negotiating, and the committee knows what we're negotiating, and then we're going back with the goal of getting these two bills out today. Senator, I can't run a meeting and read notes.
Then just read notes.
I've got so many notes.
Well, this note says that kerosene was beneficial back then because it was there, and rural areas only got electricity when the government subsidized coal.
Okay, but that was the federal government.
Correct.
All right, we are not the federal government.
In which case, we
Did some houses not even have kerosene? Did some houses, were they still burning twigs and eating grass?
my house had kerosene until the interstate came through. But it wasn't the typical house.
Senator McDonald?
Yeah.
I have that language that you sent me this morning for the committee of conference.
It's been updated.
That's what I thought. Can I get an electronic copy of that? Or do you just have the paper one? Do you mind if I go copy that?
I gotta speak to my company.
I thought we were
Totally fine,
fine
and then, let me know and I'll get you all copies.
but I've gotta go down to the.
My conferees have the same copy.
So
Okay,
policy
we can
and
also do it at
adjourn
12:30
until
upstairs,
back at
if you
5.
bring it.
One definition, and this needs to be explained to us before we turn it over
Do
to
you,
them.
do you
I
have a
see.
sheet for me?
I do, I have a sheet I wanted to show you.
Okay, and we'll, yeah, if I sign that, we'll take it up and,
Okay.
I'm again requesting some amendments proposed.
you cannot offer amendments.
I don't mean offer, but I see Comcast and Easy Fiber and,
This has to come out today,
but I've
so,
been asking for weeks.
but you can't offer
I'm
amendments.
not offering amendment, I'm gonna propose something.
No, you cannot propose them. You get somebody in
Well, that's
the
what,
committee.
that's what Easy Fiber and did.
All right, they,
What's,
no, not now. I'm on Ed Finance. I've gotta get this through and I've
Comcast
gotta
and
get
Easy
it
Fiber?
out. Okay, write it down, give them to Senator McDonald.
What a week to show up.
All right, let me see this.
He can't articulate them the way I can.
I assume that you didn't want to put a balance sheet on there.
Probably not
That
yet.
complicated.
That's complicated,
Right,
but,
so, the total amount of taxes you're raising, 25 versus 39.
okay.
This, using the tax rates, is a little higher than the house, right? So, and that's the average increase in the bill. And down here, we just have to show the average tax bill, which would drop 52 versus 85, or 89 versus 81. That includes every appreciation and changes in school spending that we did last year. Too complicated still?
No, actually, I find that one easier because it's more complicated.
This one has been hard to deal with people that
Well, I
aren't dealing
think
with these needs. We do both on the flip side.
I think, yeah,
Okay.
because I think this is the one I'm used to.
That's the one issue I need to deal with.
Yeah, and see, that's the big issue.
Is this machine
And then
copied?
there's a $19 million.
No, it's not. You want me to make
I
copies
was
for you?
working 19.
20 of those too.
20, any others?
No, I don't think so. I'm gonna be down by the
Yeah, and I will
back.
say,
I'll meet you up
I've still got one attached to this.
Okay, so if I do this back to back, bring you a copy for your signature, where can I find it here? Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm gonna get out and see what the floor time is. So I know.
No, I do know a few things, but. Nice to see you. Yeah. Yep. Nice to see you. I'll see you next
When you do on the text.
Mine varies.
Right, so.
Wireless router, but attach the slowest device in your life. It's the lowest common denominator that comes your
I quoted from the testimony that we posted, which is on the website. It's on the committee's website.
Okay, that's, you did,
Yeah,
you were the one who made the,
right, yeah,
got it into the publication.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
good, great, thanks. I don't know how many, now that's not everybody, every town gets that, but they don't necessarily,
We actually email it to about 5,000 people.
really.
So, yeah, and there's some, we snail mail still because of budget issues, about 600. It might be less than that now because the number keeps coming down,
I
but.
see the thing when I go to the town office, but I don't know what our clerk actually opens or forwards on.
Right, so we mail to individuals like people and planning
Today's
commissioners and, listers and, public works managers, mayors, all that.
Is that your camera?
So you were generally
Who are you filming
of
for?
quite responsive to the bill.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, just like to know who's filming us.
always happen.
I like to, okay, well, I wasn't sure. You've always been in with And I'm not sure why this is a clean environment.
And with who?